following through on his promise. Remember when J.D. Vance made that speech after the president of France, I think Emmanuel Macron, visited China and said, look, we want to be partners. This is now a multipolar world order. We don't want to be bystanders. We don't want to just sit back and watch America decide. Particularly, most of them are livid with what is happening in Iran. And on top of that, Macron also said something recently in relation to the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. He said, yes, we want to help to open the Strait of Hormuz by removing those mines there. But after this war is over, we can't just afford to send our troops there, like chickens, without head. Blindly, we're just going to send our soldiers there to get shot at. And Iran have said clearly that, look, if anything happens, that they are going to fire at anything that moves. And they followed through on their threat today by doing exactly what they promised to do. So during this conversation, guys, we are going to look at some of the happenings on the global stage. Are we about to resume war in Iran? This is what some of the permutations, look like. There's a strong possibility of a resumption of hostilities, particularly in relations to Iran. The IRGC have a different opinion from the government. The government believe that methodically you can please the Americans, you can give them, let's not go back to war again, because the US knows exactly what they're doing. Slowly and surely they're pulling out Iran feather by feather. So the president initially said he's not interested in resuming hostilities. He said, oh, well, we like the Iranian people. He has said so many things already, but his words are not matching out with his action. And for him now to claim that they are still in a state of ceasefire, why trying to send his... It's funny. This guy thinks he's smart, right? He's claiming that they are in a state of ceasefire. Why trying to send his troops or his navy to try to open the Strait of Hormuz and take control of the Strait of Hormuz? No, that if you are Iran, why would you accept that? Why should you accept that? Iran should not accept that, because the US is trying to play this game where they think that they are smart and they are slowly pulling out their troops. They are pulling in their troops. They say we want negotiations. And the time that Iran sent like that 8 or 10-point plan to President Trump, he said, yeah, it looks good. We want to work with it. And immediately they started the conversation. America started hardlining. They started demanding for something else. They started even demanding things that they did not demand in the lead up to the war. So Iran knew that this wasn't going anywhere. And what happened? The US was using that opportunity to mobilize their navy to that place. They were using that opportunity to mobilize their forces to that area. And this is what they've done over time. So if you are Iran, why should you accept an American preeminence and dominance in the region? Why should you accept America to continue to do that to you? And this is why, people like the leaders of the IRGC are saying, no, we can't trust these guys. We cannot trust them at all. And we shouldn't put our eggs in one basket. We cannot allow this to happen. Because if you do that, the US cannot be trusted. You can't even trust these people. How on earth or how in the world do you think you can trust these Americans? We've had negotiations with them. And what the US does is that anytime they're sitting down for these meetings, or they distract them with meetings, the US is planning something else. They're doubling down on something else. They are doing something completely different. So none of this is genuine and none of this is honest. So, but before we continue, I want us to look at what the recent development in relations to American presence in Europe, because President Trump have been telling NATO that if you guys don't support our war efforts in Iran, there will be a price to pay. We know that you are at war with Ukraine, and if you don't support us, we are also going to punish you with Ukraine. If you don't support us, we'll make sure that your expedition in Ukraine does not succeed. This is what the Americans are doing, and they are doing it very tactfully. They are doing it, in a way and manner where it won't look really like obvious. So America is playing this game of checkers, where they are, on one hand, they are saying something, but they are doing something completely different. So if you are Iran, why should you, if you are Europe, why should you be bullied into that position? 1,500 American troops pulled out of Germany. Let's look at what the US is doing. So Trump have decided to reduce US troops in Germany. Why were they there in the first place, and what can Europe do? And the US stationed tens of thousands of troops across European bases, using them as logistics and launch sites, and for its wars, reducing their presence could push Europe away from NATO and towards its own security path. I believe the Europeans should do that. Why should the Europeans even depend on America? Like, for real. If you are Europe, why should you depend on these people? You have to find your own ways of creating your own security architecture. So if the Europeans are going to say, look, we've had enough, we want to set up our own system and structure, we don't want to depend on the United States anymore. The US have done nothing for us. All they have done for us is pain and drama. And so enough is enough. Let's get out of this mess. I'm fully in support of that. 100%. The Europeans should, use this opportunity and tell America, look, if you really want to pull out, you do it. But the point here is that they are using it to blackmail them because of Ukraine. Because they don't want to, the Europeans have this animosity with Russia because they've done a lot of damage. And if this continues, Russia might be able to win in Ukraine. They don't want Russia to win. So they are spending billions and they don't even have their own satellite. The Europeans are weak. So the Secretary of State Marco Rubio said something recently about France after the visit of Macron to China. And he said, is France now the leader of Europe? France, who claims to be the most powerful country in Europe at this point, cannot even fly their own troops to Africa. They couldn't do that. They couldn't fly their own troops to Mali. And speaking of Mali, that makes a lot of sense to me. The US announced on Friday that it will withdraw 5,000 soldiers from Germany, its largest European base, further straining its relationship with Europe and amid the rift over the Iran war and tariffs. It's not like they want to withdraw them completely. We heard that they are repositioning them to Poland, to strengthen Poland, to make Poland far more powerful and important than Germany. And so that kind of balance will not really go well with the Europeans. So if they want to move out their troops, let them move out their troops. But if they want to use that to checkmate Russia, and that becomes a problem. It's very complex because the way the US behave is that when you ask them to leave, that's when they'll stay. And if you ask them to stay, that's when they'll leave. So this is very, very important in these modern times. So President Donald Trump have threatened to withdraw its forces earlier this week after German Chancellor Friedrich Merz criticized the US over Iran war and the war in West Asia and said Iran was humiliating Washington in negotiations. Trump also threatened to reduce the US troop presence in Italy and Spain. Let him do it. Who cares? And then you have all these leaders of NATO crying up and down. The Europeans need to set up their own security architecture and spend more on their own military. Simple and short. And is the US now going to work with Russia against Europe? Because this might also be the game plan. You never know. America has no friend. It's all about interest. If the US works with Russia, it might not even work. And I don't know, it might also pose a significant question in terms of, the way forward. Because if America and Russia begin to work together and then cut off the alliance with China, China can easily take territory from Russia. The Russians have to be very careful as well. The US has stationed, like I said, tens of thousands of troops across its European bases, using them as logistics and launch sites for its wars. A significant chunk of these troops, around 40,000 of them in Germany. Somebody was asking, how many troops? Between 40 to 50,000 American troops in Germany. The forward deployment position forces close to potential conflict zone is also a key part of NATO defenses and its deterrence against traditional foes as Russia. That was the whole essence of the creation of NATO, and to continue to sustain the elephant. The elephant is the United States. The insatiable test for war and profits and gains and conflicts around the world. This is what America stands for. To project power, they have to fight wars. They have to continue to bomb and destroy and pillage. So why does the US have troops in Germany? The history of US troops in Germany is a direct legacy of World War II. Now, after Allied troops won, the US troops stayed back primarily as an occupation force in Germany. They occupied Germany with the Soviet Union. At that time, we have East Germany and West Germany. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, East and West Germany reunified. And the US have not left there ever since because they say, oh, we have to keep NATO going, even though the Warsaw Pact was gone, we need to keep this going and so on and so forth. So this history of US troops in Germany is a direct legacy, like I say, of the Second World War. But as one war gave way to a different kind of conflict, which is the Cold War, they maintained their presence. The strategic rationale behind the US troop presence evolved. Germany's geographical positioning within Europe made the country ideal for the US to deter Soviet aggression away from home. It was in proximity, it was very close, it was like very strategic. So Germany was like the battleground between the East and the West, and you have like all these forces stationed there with the MI6, you have American CIA, and you have the Russian FSB, whatever. They were stationed there in East Germany. So this was like the legacy. At the height of the Cold War in 1975, US troops in Europe numbered around about 3 million, about 3,200,000 forces. These were like, no, not, what am I saying? About 320,000, I mean to say, close to 500,000. Now, these forces were vital to US projection of power globally. And the collapse of the Soviet Union prompted a steady drawdown on forces in subsequent years, and as a shift in the role played by these bases. They became vital forward staging sites and logistical hubs for the US military operations. Now, this is according to the Guardian, like the US have to be present there because of eventuality. And at that time, they were at Cold War with the Soviet Union, and they fought battles through proxies. So Germany and all these other countries were like staging ground. They were like launching bases for American presence in the region. And yeah, this was the main problem at that point. But having said that, why does America continue to maintain this force presence in Europe, even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, even after the collapse of the Warsaw Pact? And these guys have refused to leave. Why have they refused to leave even after the collapse of the Warsaw Pact and after the collapse of the Soviet Union? This is, the question that genuinely need an answer. But America is livid that the Europeans are mocking the US about their failure to deal with the Iran situation, about the failure to contain Iran. And it's impossible because even if America is able to do anything there, seize territory from them, that will not change anything. They will continue to fight. This war, there's no kind of agreement that America will, position themselves on Iranian territory for whatever reason. That's not going to happen. And at the end of the day, America is looking for some sort of leverage to contain China. So what we are seeing with Trump getting deeper and deeper is the beginning of bigger problems to come. If this war with Iran continues and America is able to deplete their resources there and they stay there for, let's say, 5 years and don't win, it's going to have a blowback effect on the whole region and will be a giant rollback. So Trump is playing with fire. They cannot end up without winning, without removing the IRGC. And if this war continues, they might be able to remove the government and bring and support an unpopular government that will be easily overthrown from office. Okay, so if they support whatever kind of monarchy they put in power and support them, I think what the US is trying to do, they are trying to create a situation where they use the Arabs against Iran. So instead of America doing the fighting, America will step back, give weapons to the Arabs, and say, go and fight for us. You are donkeys, just fight for us. They give the Arabs the weapons to fight against Iran in a war that they might not win, and use that as an excuse, and also allow Iran some sort of breathing space to continue to get weapon supplies and to fight back against the Arab countries and create a situation of annihilation where everybody will blow up each other. And who benefits from this? This is the calculation of Israel. And when the Arab countries are so weak, Israel can step into those places and take them. So this is the calculation. And the Saudis are, I must give one thing to the Saudis, even though they have created the situation themselves, they are now clearly thinking through it and say, hang on a second, let's not let our emotions take control of us. Because at the end of the day, if we go to war with Iran, and Iran start getting supplies from their own friends, and the Arabs get supplies, and they're weakening themselves to a point where Saudi is completely weak, Israel is going to expand to take territories from Jordan and Saudi Arabia, right? and they take territory. I mean, Syria is already weak. So Syria is not a country anymore. It's completely obliterated. They're trying to get into a process of nation building. But the Israelis took territory from them that they will never give back. It's not about peace agreement. They're not interested in peace agreement. What kind of peace agreement are you talking about? And they're saying any sort of agreement must be conditioned on agreement with everybody. And that is impossible. So if Israel is saying that we took territory from Syria, but in order for us to give you back this territory, we must make peace with Turkey. Turkey must sign a peace agreement with us. Every other country must be on board and accept to our demands. That is practically impossible. So the Israelis are playing this game of deception when slowly but surely they are taking territory and playing this game to keep everybody fighting against each other in order to weaken them. So like I said, the US have decided to withdraw their troops, about 5,000 forces stationed in Germany. There are about between 40 to 50,000 American personnel in Germany with their family members and other non-essential or other workers, totaling to about 100,000. The largest of this deployment is in Kaiserslautern. And I will take a look at the list of American troop presence in Europe. Like I said, the United States of America has over 40 military installations in Germany, 2 of which were scheduled to close. Over 220 others have directly been closed, mostly following the end of the Cold War in the 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, many of them were, like I said, positioned strategically to serve as forward posts in any war against the USSR. Because at that time, they were in a war with the USSR in what they call the Cold War. And those bases host approximately, like I said, in Germany, between 36,400 troops as of 2026. The United States Armed Forces were initially organized as the US EFT, that's the United States Force European Theater at that time. And from August 1st, 1945, with the creation of NATO, to the 28th of February 1946, after the Second World War and the creation of NATO, in Berlin, and Frankfurt, most of those places were created because now that they've defeated the Soviet Union, they wanted to occupy the country, and they split up the country with the Soviet Union, in order to create this kind of balance in Europe. So the Soviet Union and America split up Germany into 2 halves, East Germany and West Germany. So one of them, I think the capital was in Bonn, and the other one was in Berlin or Munich. But that is not our conversation for today. Let's look at the list of American military installations in Germany. I'm going to provide you with the list. Let's take a look at them. So you have the artillery Kasan in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I think I'll be able to share this on. Let me share my screen because I'm looking at this from. So let's look at the list of US military installations in Germany. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. Let's see how I can forge this. For those of you watching on YouTube, let's see how I can, let's remove this one. Don't forget, guys, we're live on YouTube. The best way for you to help the conversation, the best way for you to do that is by sending likes and engaging with the conversation through likes and your comments. Very important, your likes and comments. And if you double tap on the screen as well, it will help us to get more people to join this live stream in order for us to be able to have this conversation meaningfully. Thank you so much for joining, guys. So let's look at the list of American presence in Europe. So like I say, artillery Kasan, Garmisch in Partenkirchen, the Barton artillery in Ansbach, Bismarck Kasen in Ansbach. They have a lot of this presence in Ansbach. Blydon housing area in Ansbach, Coleman Army Airfield in Mannheim. And remember that we have like the Kaiserslautern military area where you have most of this troop presence, And you see, this is Denner Kessen in Kaiserslautern, Coleman Army Airfield. So if you take a look at the long list, 46 American army installations in Germany alone. 46 of them. And some of them, by the way, have been dissolved, but you have over 46 American army installations, in Germany. Over, as of 2026, close to 40,000 American personnel. If you add that with the non-essential workers, some of the white-collar workers, some of them working with the military, but they are not personnel. Put it together, all of it, numbering close to 100,000 American deployments in Germany with their family members, because at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Look, I understand that that is contributing to the German economy, but it's also a colonial project. So the Germans, at the end of the day, have to decide. If they are really serious about building Europe, they have to decide. Instead of all the rhetoric and talk, they will have to decide whether or not they want this to continue. Whether or not they want the US military presence in that continue to be like permanent. It cannot be like a forever thing with the US, doing all this madness about constant intervention in Europe. And these 5,000 troops, they say they have permanently moved them to Germany, to Poland. So you have, like I said, about 5,000 of these US troops, and then they're claiming that they moved them to Germany. It doesn't even add up. It doesn't make any sense. America is not like is the neo-colonial master of the world. Like you have this idea that the Europeans were the ones that were going around colonizing places in Africa, in the Pacific. And the US, after the Second World War, inherited most of those American assets. So they did that after the Second World War. They inherited most of their assets. And now they are also continuing with the constant expansion and projection of power by even threatening the Europeans themselves. And of course, if America threatens Europe, Europe should be very worried. The Europeans cannot ally with Russia because of the history. They don't like the Russians. They want to employ the Americans to help them. And a lot of trust have been damaged. Because if the whole of Europe unite together with Russia, the US will run away. I'm telling you. The economies put together, the European Union economy is the second largest economy in the world after the American economy. So if they put the economy together with the resources of Russia, they have no problem. But somebody is interested in dividing them. So when we talk about division in Africa, it's not just about Africa. You need to understand. It's not just about Africa. They're also doing this to the Europeans because the Europeans also have an issue where they don't like themselves that much. And because of this, it's easier if you are if you have colonial ambitions, to do this to them. If the Europeans themselves don't want to see each other eye to eye, what will you do? You just intervene. You just come in and tell them, oh, I'm the one that's coming to help you, X, Y, Z. And then you are able to manage the country. You're able to do all of this. At the end of the day, the US is not there for good reasons. And I would elaborate on that. The US is not in Europe for the best of reasons. So for those of you just joining, you're welcome. Don't forget we are live on YouTube as well. Continue to engage with the conversation. Continue to, if you click on the screen twice, it's going to send likes. And if you comment on it as well, it goes a long way to helping our broadcast. Thank you so much for those of you that have been consistent and loyal and support of this channel. This will not be possible without you. And hopefully, we will get there. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Let's continue with the conversation. Like I said, despite these drawdowns, the US still maintain a permanent presence of around 68,000 active personnel across 20 to 40 bases in Europe, as at the end of the year, according to the US Defense Manpower data. About 70,000 US troops in Europe, despite the drawdowns. So they are telling you that they want to move out 5,000 personnel from Europe, but they're not really moving them home. They are taking them somewhere else. Because the military, if you look at the American military structure, it's a project, right? So if you take out 5,000 personnel, that's like a $1 billion or $2 billion. I don't even know what that is, or $3 or $4 billion a year less of cost. And the people that are benefiting from it, the jobs is created, the family that depends on it, it means that Trump is cutting jobs. Trump have decided to cut, you have 5,000 troops, but that's like a job for like 20,000 jobs. Because America have been able to brand the economy around this sort of projects. Okay, they stimulate the economy by the military size. So you have, even though they are not in a constant state of war, sometimes they do go to war, but they create an artificial economy, a war economy around it, because the military, uh, it have to, spendings and maintenance and spare parts and people working in industry. So this is how you create an economy. And this is what America have created the economy around. And then they use the military industrial complex as well to create commercial arms manufacturing for other countries. So where America can project power on them. For instance, what happened in Nigeria is that the Nigerian government, because of our experience during the Jonathan era, and the US refusing to sell arms to us, citing the Leahy Law and some of the lobbying that was done at that time. So we have been scarred by that, and the Nigerian government under this Bola Tinubu was prioritizing getting arms from Turkey and from other countries, getting cheap weapons from them, drones and other stuff. And then the US got interested. Like, who the hell are you guys? In Nigeria, you are trying to sideline America from business. And then President Trump started shouting about Christian genocide. And what that does is that it puts pressure on the Nigerian government domestically, because it is a very sensitive topic to divide the Christians and Muslims, divide and rule. And what happens? The Nigerian government started running helter-skelter. And the moment he made that announcement that is going to bomb Nigeria and come in guns are blazing, what happened is that we started seeing like bandits. They started kidnapping. They'll go and take like 200 schoolgirls, 300 schoolboys. Why? Because it now became lucrative. President Trump made the kidnapping business lucrative in Nigeria. If you look at it from that perspective, he made it very lucrative by his statements. And when he said, oh, if you don't do X, Y, Z, I'm going to come in guns are blazing, what that did is to, of course, highlight the situation which was already in existence in Nigeria, but it now gave social oxygen, if you like, to those people that were doing it. And they started going from school to school and kidnapping and terrorizing and doing all that stuff. And that became the new norm. It became the absolute new norm. And then, if you look at the whole situation, it became a mess. So that now put pressure on the Nigerian government to now say they sent lobbies and like, okay, what can we do to please you? Of course, for me, I don't really know what kind of agreement this guy signed with the United States, but it seems to me that they had some sort of understanding and agreement with them that whether it's weapon sales, whether it's access to rare earth minerals, whether it's access to, all sorts of businesses that President Trump have done with the Nigerian government. And since then, the crime rate have gone up, but the US president have not said anything after that. Once the deal is done, if you remember the time he was doing the same thing with Ukraine and shouting that the Ukrainians were the ones that started this and that, after those agreements were signed for rare earth minerals with Ukraine, President Trump stopped criticizing Zelensky and was now laughing with him and inviting him and so on and so forth. So for them, it's just business. And they know how to put pressure on you domestically to get out what they want. It's easy for them. They know how to put pressure on you domestically. They know how to act around you. They know how, to get around the corner. For those of you just joining, you're welcome, guys. At the end of the day, we will get there. And by the way, guys, somebody gave hope to me today. For those of you that joined the live stream earlier, because I'm trying to do this project in Africa where I have to find a way to travel around, with my motorbike and so on and so forth. Somebody came to my live earlier and is like, Sav, you need to go and find out how much it costs. I'm going to buy you the bike. He says something like that. And I was so happy. I don't know whether he follows through on it or not, but I was like very super excited that he said that, because this have always been, at the back of my mind. And people are like, why don't you take action? Sometimes these things are really difficult. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where, but at the end of the day, this is what I really want to do. And I hope it comes through. Let's see what we can do before the end of the month. Whatever happens, I'm still going to get on the road regardless. and let's see how it goes. So don't forget, guys. We'll very soon. I'm working assiduously behind the scenes on my own as well to see, where this leads to, and how we can get on the road and travel around Africa, West Africa. So for those of you that are following my pages, don't forget that this is the goal, and we'll get back on the road very soon by the grace of God. Keep praying and keep supporting. For those of you that come regularly on my stream, you joining the stream every day also helps me, gives me more confidence to do more of this. And very soon I will go viral and be one of the top searches in Africa. Well, it's easy. This is doable. This is easy. This is the way I see it. And slowly but surely we are getting there. And I hope everything is sorted out before the end of the month. I get myself together with the whole mess happening around, and we're able to refocus on the project. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for those of you that are just joining. So, like I said, the breaking news is that the U.S. over the past 3 days have pulled out 5,000 forces from Germany, and they have relocated some of these forces to Poland. And American troop presence in Europe is about 70,000. In Germany alone, you have about 40,000 American troops with non-essential workers, civilian workers, and their family and the support around them, totaling close to 100,000 people stationed in Germany. In Camp Ramstein, in Kaiserslautern military area, and so on and so forth. And for those of you that are just joining, I also showed the list of the host of American installations in that area, which I talked about earlier. So don't forget, guys, don't forget to engage in the conversation. We continue to do our best. Don't forget that we give you guys the latest updates. We give you guys the latest news. The United Arab Emirates uh, reported earlier that they intercepted Iranian drones and they intercepted Iranian missiles. On top of that, the Iranian Navy also stated that they hit American destroyer or frigate that was trying to escort some of these vessels that were stuck in the Strait of Hormuz and guide them in and out to get oil or something like that. So this has been the situation. The United Arab Emirates said its air defense system intercepted ballistic and cruise missiles fired from Iran, and a fire at the oil facility in Fujairah was reported after a drone attack. Iran has yet to issue an official comment, but according to Al Jazeera correspondent in Tehran, they report that Iranian military officials have told state media that Iran had no plan to attack the UAE. You see where this is going? If Iran has no plan to attack the UAE, who else could have done that? And you see, they are trying all possible means to turn the Arabs against Iran. Okay? Iran stated clearly that if America starts the war with them, then they have a right to retaliate. So this has been like look, the calculation here is that they want to weaken Iran and then give the fight to the Arabs to do it. They want the Arabs to do the fighting, to go against Iran. And this makes a lot of sense because if the Arabs turn against Iran, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, whether they have any troop, and all these other countries, they'll turn against Iran. Then they create a situation of civil war in Iraq. And then Syria again. Of course, Syria will be the first to send their troops to fight against Iran because of this deep-seated animosity and hostility against Iran. And said Iran came to the country and displaced a lot of people and participated in the war. And most of the question I ask most of those Syrians that I go live with every time, I'm like, so you have a problem with Iran, right? And you want Iran to be destroyed because of what Iran did to you. They said, yes, the Shia did this to us. Iran did this to us. The Alawites in Syria did this to us. The Alawites sold out the country to Israel. They said, Hafez al-Assad, and during the war, the war in 73, and Salah Jadid, these two guys were Alawites. And how did they rise up in the ranks? And the French encouraged most of the minorities, the Christian, the Alawites, even in Lebanon, the Druze, they encouraged them to get into the army and the political structure and establishment. Most of them went to college. For Hafez al-Assad, he was the first member of his family to go to school. If you look at the story. And then he rose in the ranks and became defense minister in the lead up to the war in 1973 called the Yom Kippur War, or what the Arabs refer to as the Ramadan War. So at the end of the day, he was able to be the de facto president, I think, around 1970 because because what happened is that Salah Jadid, who was the president at that time, wanted to remove Hafez al-Assad from power. And Hafez al-Assad, being Hafez al-Assad, knew of the plot and then turned around and arrested Salah Jadid, put him in prison, and he died in prison. So this was the power standoff with people from the same political orientation, these people from the same political class, and most of them are like followers of the Ba'ath movement. The Ba'ath party was a political party, set up in Syria, I think in the 50s or the 60s, by a group of Christian Orthodox boys from Damascus. Okay, this were Michel Aflaq and his people. They were the ones that set up the Ba'ath party. But that's not a story for today. What I'm saying is that in Syria, the Syrians are willing to have this animosity against Iran, but they won't have the same animosity against Russia. The Syrian president, Ahmed al-Shara, as they call him today, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani, he traveled to Moscow and met with praised the Russian president and talk about, how powerful Russia is and so on and so forth. And the Russians still maintain their military base in Tartus and in Latakia on the coast. Okay, so they said, yeah, if you ask most of the Syrians, they said, yeah, when we're dealing with a bigger power, we have a different way of doing it. Okay, but for Iran, we will not like them for ideological reasons. They are not like us. Most Iranians are Shia, and they are not Arabs like us, and we don't accept them. But the same people would accept fighters from China, from Kyrgyzstan, from Chechnya and Dagestan in the South Caucasus, in the south of Russia. They brought in fighters from Central Asia and around the world that went in to fight as Mujahideen. The whole idea of foreign legion and soldiers. In fact, there's one of the biggest groups during this war. It's a foreign group. During the Syrian war was a group called Jaish al-Muhajirun wal-Ansar. It's led by a guy called Takan Batirashvili, or popularly known as Abu Omar al-Shishani. They call him the Chechen. Abu Omar, the Chechen. Okay, I think it's from Chechnya or Georgia, like Georgia, most of them are, you have a lot of Chechens in Georgia as well. So most of these guys fought, in different battles against Russia. They fought in Bosnia, and then they're moving them as foreign legions back and forth. And these same guys had no problem against America and Israel. They said their fight is against the near enemy. This was one of the manifestos of Al-Qaeda, and this is also part of the manifesto of Jabhat al-Nusra. It's an Al-Qaeda affiliate. There was no hiding it. And a lot of them celebrated these Al-Qaeda fighters. They venerate them. They love them. And these guys are clients of the Saudis and of the Gulf countries who are okay with supporting Al-Qaeda and other groups abroad. Even in Africa, it's the same. Even in Africa, you see, this is exactly the same thing these guys are doing in Africa. And we have a problem with that. But the point I'm making is that America and their allies and the Israelis, they have this idea of playing this game of divide and rule when they're turning these people against each other to fight each other and bleed each other in a war of attrition. So the U.S. can step back, because if the U.S. get drawn into the war, they get sucked into the war. This is not what President Trump wants. America can send troops there and send maybe like 500,000 troops or 400,000 troops or whatever to try to control the country. I mean, it will be possible, but for nation building, it's going to be impossible. So if they're sending 200,000-300,000 troops and demand that the Arabs also join in, the Arabs will be okay with that. But the Arabs don't want to be sent by America and by implication Israel to go and fight Iran for the benefit of Israel. Because at the end of the day, if they do that, it's going to benefit Israel, whether you like it or not. If they do that, it will be of enormous benefit to the state of Israel. Look, because when you say this, a lot of people are like, oh, but you can't say that. This is just Iran. They're trying to have nuclear weapon. The nuclear weapon issue is just a red herring. At the end of the day, the U.S. is not even willing at this point to have any real meaningful negotiation with Iran, and they keep changing the goalpost. And there was a video about President Trump, with President Trump saying something about, oh, we're not going to. I think President Trump said something in regards about, oh, we are acting like pirates. I love the fact that we took over their vessel, and we say stop right now. And he was describing it, and in an audience in the fora, and they were all laughing. For him, this is about power. So if there's somebody to bully and taunt, and you're going to do that, and there's no real political consequence at this time for the U.S. president because it is not making the front and center of the news like it used to because the firing has stopped, then that reduces a lot of pressure on the U.S. president because he goes to the press conference every day. They're asking him about this, and American troops are dying and returning home. He doesn't want to see that. So what they want to do now is to do it in an asymmetrical form. America have all the power, but launching all those attacks against them, Iran will mean that Iran will have, to fire back and also fire back at American personnel in different areas. And see, this is a situation. So the UAE is crying foul and say, "Oh, we are the victims of Iran. These Persian Shias will not leave us alone." But what they are not telling you is what they have done that brought us to this position in the first place. How did we get here? How did we end up in this position? We ended up in this position because the United States of America have been advocating for years about Iran, and for over 47 years, if you like. And yesterday, I did the live section when I talked about this extensively, and I'm like, okay, look, these guys are making claim that Iran is doing X, Y, Z, but nobody's telling you about American intervention in Iran in 1953. It goes back even way beyond that, in the 30s, that led to the eventual collapse of the Qajar dynasty and the building of the modern Iranian state. And then they continue, when they dug for oil and oil exploration, and the British have built one of the biggest refineries in the world in Abadan. They were digging oil in Iran and feeding their industries back home. So this was one of the biggest assets of Britain. And then when Mossadegh came to power, what Mossadegh did when he came to power, thank you so much for the comments on YouTube. I appreciate. So when Mossadegh came to power, what he did was to decide to look at the books and say, hang on a second, we need to look at the financial dealings and the books of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which is now, I think, British Petroleum today. What are you really doing? Why are we not getting anything at all? So I think the British Petroleum at that time was taking 4/5 of the proceeds and leaving the Iranians with crumbs. And they say, look, we need to renegotiate. You cannot be exploiting us like this. We need to renegotiate. And Britain said, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. But it would have been foolish for Britain to launch a war against Iran. So they pulled out most of their personnel from Iran, and they laid a blockade on Iran, will not allow Iran to trade on the international market and sell their oil, and so on and so forth. And then with the help of America, they launched Operation Ayas. So Operation Ayas was what led to the overthrow of Mossadegh, kept him under house arrest for 2 years, and then kept him in prison for 2 years and kept him under house arrest until he died. So this is the background of the story that I want you guys to understand. And this is what have defined the relationship. And after they did that, they now made the Shah the ultimate ruler of the country. They made him the Shahanshah of Iran. The Shahanshah of Iran, meaning the king of kings, the experimental constitutional monarchy that was practiced in Iran was completely abrogated. And this also brings me to the point of, like, if you look at the Middle East, this idea of democracy is not in the best interest of America. It is not in the best interest of the West. The US, the United States, will never allow democracy to be a thing in Iran. It will not allow democracy to flourish in Iran. I mean, why should they? Because democracy will not benefit them. Democracy will absolutely not benefit the United States of America. Because if there's democracy in Saudi Arabia, the people that will come to power will not favor Israel. They'll make changes. The level of stability we are seeing today would not be the same. Okay, this is why in places where they don't really care about, they use democracy as a mantra to go and bomb those countries and give excuses, right? And then for us in Africa, we believe some of these things we see on the media, it's all a facade. And like I said, I would continue to advocate in this regards on these positions. And how did we get here? Okay, the United States of America decided with Israelis to encourage protests in Iran and told them that help is coming. Because they've all planned for this. They knew that this war was coming. They'll both be preparing. And the US was ready. Trump was ready to go there. Iran refused to give up its nuclear weapon. The kind of negotiations the Americans are looking for. Iran was unwilling to do that. Okay, so the US was encouraging people to go and demonstrate. Demonstrate mean overthrow the government. I think President Trump said something recently and say that these Kurds, we will deal with them because you Kurds refuse to go and fight on our behalf to remove the Iranian government. You need to understand the Iranians in the Kurds in Kermanshah, in Ilam and Kurdistan provinces in Iran, they have a different mentality and a different thinking. They are not just going to, go head first and just start fighting and, doing whatever America expects them to do. This is not their thinking. This is not what they are looking at. They're not really interested in that. And yeah, this is why when people speak about Iran and the whole stuff, they need to understand that the United States of America, it's not the best of partner in terms of like dealings with them. They're not the best of people to deal with. And yeah, that brings me to almost the end of the conversation. Do you guys think this war will resume? Because we have seen over the past 48 hours, Iran launching missile against American destroyers that were trying to enter into the Strait of Hormuz. The US said, yeah, we went in there, nothing happened. Iran said, no, we stopped you from going in there. So it's a battle of PR. And secondly, UAE reporting drone strikes and all of that and ballistic missile strike on the territory. And the Iranian government claiming that they are not interested in war. And then another thing I found out is that the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, and the prime minister and the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi have been going to Russia to try to talk to the supreme leader, because we heard that the supreme leader is there and that he's injured, and that the IRGC making the decision on the ground is hardlining. And then that gives President Trump an excuse to say, yeah, we don't even know who is in charge. We don't know who to talk to. So while the government of the elected political leaders are more rational and are calling for dialogue, the IRGC said, no, how can we dialogue with these guys when they have killed all these people they've killed in Iran and cannot be trusted? Because the elected political leaders asked us for dialogue. We went to Pakistan, we were talking with them, and then they imposed a blockade. So the best way to do this is to fight our way out of this, to earn the respect of these Yankees and put an end to this madness. So this is what they are saying. And on the other hand, you have the political leaders of the country that have a completely different opinion. The IRGC is interested in continuing the fight. The elected political leaders of Iran wants to bring to an end whatever is going on, to negotiate and to dialogue. So this is the state we have found ourselves today. So for those of you just joining, like I said, don't forget to like, to share. We're live on YouTube as well. Go there and leave your comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We're live on YouTube. Savvark Media on YouTube, guys. We are Savvark Media on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. You guys are amazing. You are the absolute best. Do not forget, we are live on YouTube. And very soon as well, as we continue, I might also be able to go out and like do some of these videos, because it's very important as well to go on the street and ask people questions, and probably get somebody that will constantly be like assisting with this work. It's not easy. This is one thing I found out. Making some of these videos is extremely difficult. And yeah, maybe when I do the live stream, the cropping and will be done by somebody else to make it easier for me and to constantly help me post some of these videos as we stream live. So I'm going to segment it like that, and as we go live every day, this is my duty, and hopefully we can get somebody on board to also assist. Thank you so much for joining, guys. You guys are amazing. You are the absolute best. You guys are the absolute best. We are live on YouTube. Do not forget to, like I said, to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and to engage with us as we continue to give you the breaking news and the latest updates around the world. Yeah, so according to the media, there might be a serious possibility of a resumption of hostility. Tehran denies U.S. claim about sinking Iranian boats. So the U.S. said that they've sunk a lot of Iranian boats that were imposing this blockade. So their navy, Iran had one of the most powerful navies in the region. America said they've sunk most of their stuff. So let's look at what is really going on. Iran has denied the claims made by the U.S. about sinking Iranian boats. The head of the U.S. Central Command says that American military has struck 6 boats in the Strait of Hormuz. The head of the U.S. Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, told journalists on Monday that the American military had eliminated a small Iranian naval force that was allegedly threatening commercial shipping in the key waterway. The reported attack was part of Project Freedom. According to President Trump, remember, he said he wants to go there to initiate and institute Project Freedom. I have to say that again. The reported attack was part of Project Freedom, announced by President Donald Trump on Sunday to escort tankers and other vessels stuck in the Strait of Hormuz since the U.S. and Iran launched the attack, since the U.S. and Israel launched the attack on Iran around late February. The U.S. claim regarding the sinking of the number of Iranian combat boats is a lie. A senior Iranian military official told the IRIB news agency on Monday. So according to CENTCOM, they claim that the U.S. military has sunk at least 6 Iranian boats while boasting of what he called an enormous amount of capability and firepower concentrated in and around the strait, including AH-64 Apache, the MH-60 Seahawk helicopters. Earlier on Monday, Iran's Fars news agency reported that the Iranian military had hit a U.S. Navy patrol boat near the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM in turn rejected the claim, stating that no U.S. Navy ships have been struck. Now, according to Washington and Tehran, they remain at odds over the fate of the key waterway, which accounts for about 20% of global seaborne oil trade. Iran reportedly suggested a new mechanism to govern the strait as part of its latest peace proposal, which was rejected by the United States. The U.S. said, no, we don't want that. So whatever Iran proposed, the U.S. said no. So as Iran is proposing, America is seeing a different view. Seeing it from a different view and said, no, we want to be the ones in charge. You cannot be in charge. And if America is in charge, that's going to be a problem. The U.S. presence is not needed in that area. Washington and Tehran are at odds over the fate of the key waterway, which accounts for about 20% of global seaborne oil trade. Now, according to Tehran, the Iranians are saying we want the Europeans to be part of the mechanism, not you, America, because there's no trust. Trump said, how can I come here and fight and you bring the Europeans? I don't trust you too. I want to control. And therefore, we must fight to the finish. This is what the U.S. president is somehow thinking about. I wish him the best of luck. Trump ordered a naval blockade of Iranian ports in a bid to make Iran agree to a peace settlement that will be satisfactory to Washington. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi called the blockade an act of war, violating the ceasefire the both sides reached in early April. And this is what the IRGC is saying. This is the declaration of war. You already blockaded us, and then you are telling us that, oh, we must accept that. I see. A lot of people actually knew something was happening. They're moving this personnel there. A lot of people were calculating that it was a ground invasion, right? But the blockade is an economic idea to economically strangle Iran. So this is the point. Planes smashes to residential building in Brazil. Yeah, so this is the point. America is trying to leverage. So Danzaman, I want you to go to the comments, and if you go to the comments, so some of the elements of this conflict are just remnants of previous incidents. Iran has been harassing ships, and it's known also do. Yeah, let's talk about that. So Danzaman, what I'm going to do, I'm going to send a link in the comments. Join the link. I think you can join it via audio as well. I think if you want, but it's preferably you can come on video. If you have like 20 minutes, we can talk about this. So go to the comments, Danzaman. I'm going to go there to the comments. If you're still here, Danzaman, I'm going to leave this link in the comments. Just copy the link to your browser, and you come up the way you did the last time. Let's have a conversation about this. I want to hear your opinion. I think it gives you an option for audio, but preferably if you can come on video, and we can have this conversation one-on-one in in about 30 minutes. That will make a lot of sense. And yeah, I hope we are able to do that really quickly. So if you're in the chat, you see there's a link that I posted in the look at the chat. If you're watching live on YouTube, check the chat on YouTube. It's on YouTube. You check the chat, you copy the link to your browser, click on it, and it will bring you here. So we can talk about this. And we talk about this and a host of other things, like even the relationship between the US and Canada, and what will be the possible outcome of this current American position against Iran. We can talk about the whole idea of the blockade and where this is leading to, okay? So this whole idea of blockade, where does it end, and so on and so forth. While you're doing that, I'm going to get water and click on the link to bring you up. Thank you so much for those of you that have been commenting and engaging with the conversation. I hope to do this regularly. I'm just not in the right frame of mind. I hope to get my energy back as soon as I get on the road. I don't know. There's something about me that when I go out and actually do field work is when I feel super fit, super energetic. But I say sedentary, I get easily sick. You know, so it has been like that for the longest possible time. So for those of you just joining, thank you so much for joining. I hope we're able to do that. Hemar, why don't you go to my YouTube and join me there? So we can talk about it. You know what you do? Go to YouTube and type Savvark Media, and then if you go there, you can join me, and we can talk about this because I'm live on YouTube, and I'm hoping you can join me there. I can bring you up there so we can have a conversation. So it's Savvark Media. I don't know. I don't have any mod here that can write it. So you can write SAVVARK Media. Write it together. No, you don't need anything. You don't need an email. Just listen to what I'm saying. Go on YouTube, search, click on the search button on YouTube, type SA, like this, my username here, not Savvark Media. SA. No, you don't need an email. You don't need an email. You don't need it. I'm using Muslima, you can join as well if you want. I'm using Restream. So Restream app, we are streaming on Restream, but it's broadcasting on YouTube. So, and you can do that without your video. You can do it with audio as well. So Muslima, is that the link? Is that the link? So that's not the link. I don't know why you're copying that link and putting there. That's not the link. If you want the link to join it, you go to once you click and join my live stream on YouTube, the link to the Restream where you can join me is in the chat. You know, it's in the chat. And if you come there, then we can have, there's no yelling and shouting here. We can just have a normal conversation. So for those of you that want to join and want to request to come up, just go to the chat. I'll leave the link that you can click and join. Okay, you don't need email. You don't need an email. So it's the HTTP, you see /studio/restream. Once you click on it, it will just bring you straight here, and we can continue the conversation. For those of you that want to join, I'm still waiting for you. Thank you so much for the likes, guys. I need to get time for some water break. Don't forget, keep the conversation going, guys. We're live on YouTube. You go there. Exactly, that's the link. You copy the link, paste it on your browser, you click on it, and it will bring you live to the stream. You don't need a YouTube. You don't even need a YouTube account. I'll be right back, guys. Continue to engage with the conversation. I'll be right back. Yes, we're back. We are back. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Did anybody click it yet? Oh my God. A lot of people, when you tell them YouTube, they think it's too official. They're afraid. Okay, let's see. All right. All right. So the United Arab Emirates said its air defense system intercepted ballistic and cruise missiles fired from Iran and a fire at an oil facility in Fujairah. So remember, Fujairah is one of the 7 emirates of the UAE. How many of you know the 7 emirates of the UAE? I'll show you real quick. You have Abu Dhabi, which is the capital. I think Abu Dhabi is the biggest. And you have Dubai. You have Sharjah, Fujairah, Ras Al Khaiman, Ras Al Khaiwan, and I think which one is the last one? So there are 7 emirates in the UAE. So the UAE is not bigger than just Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi happens to be the capital and the political nerve center. Okay, but it's bigger than just that. It's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. Thank you so much for joining, guys. You guys are the absolute best. Continue to engage in the conversation. Latest development, guys. A Palestinian have been killed and several seriously injured in an Israeli drone attack on Gaza City earlier this morning. Israel's military said its forces were targeted twice by Hezbollah mortar fire in southern Lebanon in recent hours without suffering any casualties. And then on the other front, South Korean Foreign Ministry said the cause of an explosion and fire aboard a South Korean-operated vessel in the Strait of Hormuz will only be determined once the ship is brought to port for examination. Iranian state media reports that the Iranian fast boats that the U.S. military claimed to have been targeted on Monday were not IRGC affiliated, but civilian vessels carrying goods and passengers, with 5 innocent people killed. Interesting. A U.S. defense official told U.S. media that 2 Navy destroyers successfully navigated the Strait of Hormuz and entered the Gulf after repelling an Iranian assault during the transit. Now, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz have urged Tehran to return to the negotiation table following Iran's reported strikes on the UAE, saying Iran must stop holding the world hostage. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney was among several leaders expressing solidarity with the UAE after it reported being targeted by Iranian missiles and drones, including an attack that caused a fire at an oil facility. It's getting interesting. The UAE has labeled the strikes treacherous and asserted its right to retaliate against Iran. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the current situation in the Strait of Hormuz makes it clear that there's no military solution to the political crisis. No military solution. So this is where we found ourselves, guys. The breakdown of the latest news and updates of what is happening around the world. So like I said, for those of you that are just joining, continue to engage with the conversation, continue to like and share. And so Hamar is already here. I'm going to paste the link again. Look, go to if you see the chart, Hamar, there's a link. There's a link there that I see. You see R. R posted a link. R means you see a black R that posted a link. That link, copy that link and paste it on your browser and click on the link, and then it will bring you here. It will give you the options, okay? There's a link that I just posted here. You see in the comments, there's a link in the comments. All you have to do is to find a way to click that link. Copy the link if it does not allow you to click it in the chat. Copy the link, paste it on your browser, and then, yeah, the link is in the chat. There still somebody, Imran Daniels, pasted it on the chat here, but it might not show. I'm seeing it is showing. So Imran Daniel pasted this. This is the link that Imran Daniels posted. And if you go back to the YouTube, the link is also there. Copy that link and paste it on your browser. Click it down. It will show you the option of copy. You paste it on your browser. Then it will give you the option to join. This is what I'm saying. It's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. It is not rocket science. It's easy. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult. Or maybe I should DM you with the link. I'm expecting you to do this if you are listening to me and hearing what I'm saying, because I don't even know whether you're actually listening to me when I'm talking, or like because if you're moving in and out and I say it, you're not focused or paying attention to it. Yeah, just copy that link. If you copy the link, it will bring you here. Yes, finally somebody made it here. Finally. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I'm going to accept this. This is Hemar. And who else? I think you're the only one that.
Hello,
Yeah, welcome. Finally, you made it here.
hello, Savvark Media. Hello, greetings, salutations.
Yeah. What's going on? How you doing?
Look, I'm looking at what's going on here. I'm seeing refueling planes, 30 of them flying over the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of delays, which is trickery, on the last, month or two, while they're building up forces there. I see governments calling their citizens and diplomats to, be on high alert. And today I see, what Iran did to UAE. And I've
Mm-hmm.
seen a coalition announcement from the Gulf countries that are, basically vowing to actually change the regime. Plus, my significant other, my soon-to-be wife, her position that she holds, and she has a lot of high upper contacts. She's in constant contact with Reza Pahlavi. So I do have some information that I can't really share, but that combined with everything that I'm seeing, I think there's a new era that's about to be ushered in. That's the sentiment I feel right now. I think that there's going to be a few weeks or a few months, or possibly maybe even a year or two of some really hard times. Maybe higher gas prices in the U.S. Maybe unfortunately casualties on the ground of innocents in Iran, but this is not something I take lightly. Obviously, human life is nothing to joke about. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I think that the Middle East is changing, and I think that we're moving towards a brighter era of collaboration with civilized nations. We'll see how it plays out, but the next few days is certainly going to be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that the indications, it shows clearly that they might go to war, and we are seeing the same pattern and build up in the lead up to the last war. So America will go back to bombing Iran. So when the bombing start against Iran, would that help America now to take control of the Strait of Hormuz? Are they now in the better position to be able to take territory in Iran? Are they now prepared to do like some sort of ground invasion and to take territory in Iran? So what are the sort of patterns you're claiming? And what is the objective here? Because Iran have been sending these proposals to the US. The US clearly is not interested. The US is asking Iran for capitulation. In fact, the last conversation they had in Pakistan, what the US is asking for now is far bigger in terms of demands than they did before the war. So it shows clearly that this Trump administration is adamant and hell bent on continuing until the regime is kicked out. Do you believe the US can do that to remove the government? And if they are going to do that, are they going to do it with the help of the Arabs? And are the Arabs willing to go to war against Iran? If they are willing to do so, what do you think is the possible outcome of it, of all of this?
All right. Let me try and remember everything because you asked it in three parts. Okay. So the first part, um, sort of sounded like you might be a little bit upset, but I could understand, your view. That being said, um, okay. Without trying to remember all three parts, let me just try and summarize. Okay. You keep mentioning Iran. Nobody knows the percentage. And I'll be honest with you. I feel that I might have been slightly brainwashed by a lot of Iranians in the U.S. that sort of paint a picture that there's 90% of the popul. Excuse me, I just had
Yeah,
some
90.
hiccups. Had
Sorry
some
about
hiccups. No, that they're trying to paint a picture that there's 90% of Iran
the
that's just,
population.
yeah, and that's anti-IRGC. And I have to tell you something, okay? Iran is a country that's 90 something percent Muslim. And while I do hold anti radical Islamic views,
Hmm.
which I, don't hide, I obviously don't think that, 2 billion people, are exactly the same. But that being said, in a country with a 99% Muslim population, I find it very hard to believe that there's 90% of the people that are anti IRGC. So, there's going to be an uphill battle. Now, in terms of, whether, you feel Donald Trump is, coming in and doing something that's, for Israel or Benjamin Netanyahu or whatever. I mean, I know you from other platforms, and I know that, you hold some views that, can sometimes be skeptical of Israel, and that's understandable. Given the level of propaganda from the Muslim Brotherhood that's pushed out into the world these days. Um, Given my knowledge, which I mean, I don't want to claim to be in the war room there, but I
Hmm.
do have some pretty good insight, via certain contacts that did serve in the Trump administration in the first term, and also my wife that is very close, like I said previously, to Reza Pahlavi. um, what we expect right now is a coalition of Arab countries that have just had enough. Okay,
Yeah.
these are countries that are not looking to position themselves as if it was the year 700 and they were still fighting under a warlord at Khaybar. This
Hmm.
is countries that are aligned with Israel, that are aligned with the West, that are aligned with, understanding of countries that, do have Judeo Christian values, that have a more modern version of Islam. We're not talking about countries like Pakistan where the president said that Israel needs to be destroyed, and we're not talking about the Gaza Strip leaders. We're talking about the UAE, the Emirates, Bahrain, Dubai, all these Saudi. So as of today, they did announce a coalition. I mean, they're pissed, and rightfully so. I mean, we know that there's a battle between, Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, and I don't really understand it. I mean, it seems to me that I don't see a lot of resistance here coming from, the more, modern, well, I say the more modern versions of Islam that do not want a radical Islamic government, in control and, of the fate of the Middle East. I mean, I know that your views on Israel You sort of giggled at things that Benjamin Netanyahu said at the United Nations 2 years ago, but what he said was very clear.
Hmm.
The future right now of the world is AI, and we cannot hide from that. It's AI combined with robotics, which can literally change the world. I mean, we have Elon Musk that's committed to colonizing Mars. We're moving into an age of Star Wars, where I mean there'll be interplanetary travel and terraforming other planets. And I mean, this all sounds like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but to summarize, okay. We're at a point in time where collaboration on AI to prevent AI and robots from literally unaliving the human race. There cannot be any more radical Islamic 7th century jihad stuff in the world. Okay. And one of the last major strongholds of that is the IRGC. Okay. There needs to be fiber optics, energy pipelines, collaboration on AI. There needs to be trade routes from Africa through to Europe, through the Middle East, through India. I mean, this stuff is not going to happen with a radical Islamic government. That's stuck in the 7th century in the time when the Quran was written. And look, I don't want to come off as a bigot, but there's a coalition now, 100% confirmed today of Arab countries that are more determined than Israel and the United States, believe it or not, to end this regime. And I think that having Israel and the United States behind them, it's going to happen. And whether it takes 2 months or 3 months or a year, and there's Americans that are saying, "Get out, get out. We don't want to pay these gas prices." This is all very nearsighted because, and I know I'm rambling here, but let me just wrap it up. It's all very nearsighted because the truth is that we all live for 36,500 days if we live to 100 years old. And it's 36,500 days. It's not a lot. The world has been spinning for trillions of days. And so when you look at the future, 100 years from now, two, three, four, 500 years from now, our lives are irrelevant. The future of humanity, okay,
Hmm.
of AI and wherever the future goes, and interstellar travel, and bringing life to other planets, and literally the survival of humanity right now depends on the elimination of darkness. And
Which
that
is
Iranian regime is one of the last bastions of darkness in the world, and it must be eliminated. So no matter what
Would you say the
anybody's
same
going to
thing?
say.
Will you say? Would you say? Sorry. Would you say the same thing about Turkey? Because again, you keep moving the goalposts. It was Saddam. It was once you remove Saddam, then everything was going to be okay. Like life would be good. And then you go from there, from Saddam to like XYZ, and this has never changed. So this whole idea that is going to be around today, tomorrow is going to be somebody else. And you said something about AI. So the reason why you're waging the war in the region is to prevent China from having access to helium and to having access to some of the rare earths, minerals, and gas that are needed to power this infrastructure for AI. Because China is having access to them. Of course, other countries are, but the Chinese have been able to build it effectively and efficiently. And America is lagging behind. It's nobody's fault. So this is a war to stop China rather than to stop radical Muslims from wearing hijab and leaving their beard.
Okay, look, I think that it's good that we can agree that the only conversation that needs to be had without sounding, too techie or geeky is that the future of the world right now is AI. Okay.
Yes.
There's, traditionally the wars have been fought with, who has the biggest this or who has the biggest that. Right now, obviously the future for empires is who controls the smartest frontier level AIs. We see right now, governments starting to implement it. We see, militaries using it. I mean, who knows what's going on behind the scenes? You and I are commoners, and for us to speculate that we know what's happening would
Mhm.
just make us, simply fools to try and imply that we know the bigger plans of the people who run the world. But it's a safe enough bet to say that, yeah, there is a battle, obviously, for who is able to collaborate and save the world and provide a excuse me, a future that is not dystopic, but
Mhm.
rather a future for the world where, I mean, imagine within the next 10 to 15 years, we could possibly be at a time where it is the most amazing time to be in life since the dinosaurs, where humanity could potentially lack for nothing, where there would be a world of abundance, a utopia.
Mhm.
And there could also be a world that looks like one of these futuristic movies from the 1980s where, the robots take over and the computers unalive us all. And it's scary to think about. So, do I know the real reason of what's going on behind the scenes and why suddenly now all of this? No. But when you say, is the war specifically to prevent China? Again, I don't know. But I can tell you that in order to have energy, fiber optics, and collaboration on AI that goes from Africa to Europe, um, you cannot have the forces of evil right smack in the middle. You just can't. So these radical Islamic jihadists in Iran need to be eliminated. Do I know all the reasons behind it? Am I, one of these people that go to these, meetings of these elusive Illuminati type groups that people referred to, or this or that? There's definitely a power structure that runs the world. We know this.
Yeah.
Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote about it in the 70s. But I mean, if you read a book, called Between Two Ages, it describes that, religion is sort of, dead. It controlled, the human population in terms of, having them heal to the powers that be for, a good amount of time. But right now indoctrination is a different, it's sort of a different way of happening. And if you look at Between Two Ages, it essentially, read the book, Sav. I would invite you to read it. I've read it and it blew my mind. um,
Mhm.
Between Two Ages basically describes a point in time where, you know, people no longer have the fear of religion, which, sort of structured society for a few thousand years. And now we're at a point where, look, 300 years ago, the only advancement that had been in thousands of years was who had a rounder wheel and who had a bigger fire. And now you fast forward, it's almost as if we maybe could have been to the future and we could have reached singularity, and we all could be in a simulation right now where we could all just, this our planet that we know, we could all just be this entire planet, our entire earth. When you look at the whole solar system and
Mhm.
understand that it's endless, our one planet that we think of as the end all and be all, we could just be, this whole planet could literally be just an alien's fishbowl. I mean, there could be thousands of planets like ours. We don't know. There's just so much that we don't understand and don't know. We could have gone to the future and this could all be a simulation. Nobody knows. But we're at a point in time where we're connecting the human brain to electrons, to ones and zeros. So, to be having basic conversations about what a person is paying to put a fossil fuel into a vehicle to move them from point A to B as the primary conversation for the future of humanity, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, of course, it makes a lot of sense. You said it yourself that we're doing this for tech, we're doing this for power, we're doing it for dominance. America wants to maintain their hegemony. And it makes a lot of sense for them to think rationally in this sense, and then to put America at the front and center, because again, this aligns with the whole idea of realism, that states are uh, the idea of realism and state centrism. The states are the
How
most
many
important
viewers do we
players.
have here on YouTube, Seth?
We have two. Danza man is here. I think he dropped, but he's back.
How
So
many viewers do we have on YouTube?
now let's say about 30. I used to. There was a time I had up to. Apparently, you remember 300 and something. It all
Look, I mean,
depends.
here's the thing, Sav, right? Um, I don't really know who you are. I mean, you and I have been speaking for a few years, and I think you get riled up by certain different crowds depending on the day. But when I think about the future, I think in a much different way. I think about, the potential for the fact that we may have already reached singularity, where human minds may have already gone to a future where our brains have been connected to ones and zeros, and that this could be, um,
This
in
could
all
be.
basic forms,
This
a
could be. This
simulation.
could be a. Are you saying that this could be a beginning of a new era in space and time?
Well,
And
no, I think but personally, I do think that it's if you listen to some of the greatest minds out there in what we think is our world today, the fact is that it's almost mathematical impossibility that we haven't already reached the future, and this is a simulation. That you and I are not, just just
part of the
atoms,
project.
but that we're electrons. There's much more of a chance that we are ones and zeros, binary code, in a simulation that's already happened
Yeah,
many and million
that
times.
that sounds like a giant conspiracy theory. But I want to live in the
It,
now.
well, it might sound like a giant conspiracy to you, but um, I mean, whether it be from my use of psychedelic drugs, mind enhancing over the years, or you know people like Ray Kurzweil that run Singularity University, which is an sort of it's an initiative of Google and NASA that's been running for the last 25 years
Yeah,
to deal with the robots and the AI that'll run the future. Um, a lot of great minds such as George Hotz, Ray Kurzweil, Elon Musk, when we look at the people that we, sort of understand in this world as having a higher understanding of the mathematics and the science, they'll all tell you that it's pretty much a situation where you and I, as weird as it is, are nothing more than a couple of fish in some
mhm,
alien who just moved out of his parents' house fishbowl. So our
yeah,
entire planet, as relevant as we all seem as humans, we're all just blips on a giant ball that's circling around a giant ball of fire. But the sun and the moon and the planets that we know in our solar system are very near-minded. Um, Imagine the entire solar system, for the breadth and the size of the unlimited galaxies and space. Imagine our entire solar system as we know it, nothing
mhm,
more than you going to the fridge. Imagine you going to the fridge is the distance from here to the sun or here to the furthest planet in our solar system, and then magnify that infinitely. And that's really how, my mind works.
yeah.
So a lot of the things that happen in our lifetime here on this planet, whether it's unique or not, our existence is completely irrelevant.
Mhm.
We are nothing, you and I right now, we're nothing but two blips on a giant ball of 8 billion humans and hundreds of billions of insects and animals. And we're blips on a ball that spins and spins around the sun. That's it. To think of us as any more relevant is arrogance and the human condition. And so our human condition is not really, able to realize two basic things. There's forces of light and forces of darkness in the world. And right
Hmm.
now, without getting into, deep thought on, whether we're in a simulation or whether there's other planets just like us or this or that, we have to
Is
look
this
at,
what you're
we have to
discussing?
look
Is
at
it?
this right now as a force of dark.
Yeah, if I can
Iran,
interrupt you for
the
a second.
IRGC is a force of darkness.
Well, that's your opinion, but let's take it one after the other. You said um, something about whether we are in a simulation or whether there's something bigger, that we do not know. Recently, there was this report that some of the American cosmonauts or whatever, or astronauts, if that's the case, and the people that worked in space, that some of them started disappearing. Oh, there you go. That they started disappearing. And President Trump said, yeah, this might just be a blip. This might just be coincidence. All of them that worked on that project disappeared. You
Oh,
know,
there was an original astronaut that was on the moon years ago, who was discredited, and he went on Alex Jones 20 years ago when Alex was less prominent, and he spoke about seeing things on the moon. I mean, look, I don't wear a tinfoil hat per se, but I can tell you that um, I went, to school in Carp, Ontario,
mhm,
for my first year of high school as a boarding school. It's a small little town, Carp, Ontario. And if you Google Carp, Ontario has one of the most credible, instances of alien encounters the world over. And I remember one night in my dormitory, I went and I was on my way to the bathroom, and I looked out the window of the bathroom and I saw something. So I went out the back door of the dormitory and I looked up at the sky and I saw something. And it wasn't until about 15 years later, because I mean, there wasn't, internet and this and that and everything else, but it wasn't until about 15 years later that I learned that exactly around that time, there was people that are some amongst the most credible with video that had been taken by government and studied and thrown into, deep dungeons to be, questioned. And I mean, some really, really crazy, crazy stuff. If you Google Carp, Ontario, Canada, aliens, okay, and I realized that in the early '90s, there was that one faithful night where I woke up and I saw something, and it's always been with me. So I do believe in life on other planets, and I've never lived like a kook over it. But not only do I believe in life in other planets, I believe that the statistic probability, the mathematical probability, if for thousands and thousands and millions of years, all we had was fire and then eventually a wheel, and now in the last couple hundred years, we have this technology and artificial computer intelligence, and the point where ones and zeros and binary code and supercomputing would literally connect to someone's brain. I think about what are the odds that we didn't already get there, and now we are just in this simulation. So
mhm,
if you want to take a look at the best explanation of potentially living in the civil in a simulation, you can mark this down. Take your pen, mark this down. I'll say it slowly. Take a pen off your desk and mark this down, and mark down George Hotz,
mhm,
GeorgeHots. His name is Geo Hotz on every social media. He's one of the people that Elon Musk have said is potentially more intelligent than him, and he's given speeches, literally explaining that our lives could be no different than Mario becoming, um, Mario within a video game, developing a consciousness and breaking out of the video game, of the Mario game. And when you
wow,
start to look at it like that and you start to understand the physics behind it, it changes a lot of your life thought. Where, I see you hosting lives a lot that discuss, this detail and that detail and this detail and that detail. Whatever the situation our world is in, um, whether it be simulation, no simulation, this, that, or the other thing, there's definitely signs of lightness and dark, dark and light.
mhm,
And like I said, to go back again, the IRGC, the Iranian regime, on this particular program that we're modeled in, or the world we're living in, or however you want to look at it, it's a
Yeah.
force of dark. It's a force of darkness,
So why would you say
and it
why
needs to be
can
and
I
it
ask you
needs to be
this?
eliminated.
So why you make this claim that the IRGC is a force of darkness and it needs to be eliminated? Are you saying that because they are radical Muslims, or are you saying that because their political behavior over the past 47 years you have not agreed with because they came to
Yeah,
power in
look, I mean,
1970?
I think we can agree that radical Islam is the biggest threat to the world today. And at the end of the day, if you look at the force of darkness that exists, yeah, I
Mhm.
mean they have proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas and all these groups that are
Yes.
causing problems in the world. But the connection to Muslim Brotherhood and stuff like that. Again, whether it's our simulation or our test or whether we're just some kind of futuristic video game that advanced life forms on other planets are playing, um, the end of this video game or simulation or just the direction that humanity is going in, it doesn't really matter how you look at it. Yes, IRGC is darkness.
So
Radical
so
Islam is
so so
darkness.
so politically you believe they are darkness. So and again you disagree with Muslim and Islam in general because you believe
I didn't
that
listen. Listen. There's darkness. Okay, there's darkness in this world, and there's light. And
and
for myself,
the
as
darkness according to you are
well, listen,
Muslims.
from my perspective as a Jewish person, I mean, Hasidism explains that there's forces in the world, and we come into this world with one reason only, which is to take the darkness and
It seems to me
transform it
like you're
into.
evading the question. Who's the darkness and who's the light? Politically, because again, this is a political
Well,
simulation.
again, I look at things in a much more advanced way.
Mhm.
I look at things mathematically and scientifically, and again, it's almost a mathematic. It is literally almost a math. And I would challenge you to take a few weeks and really bring yourself up to speed. But it's almost completely a mathematical improbability that we have not already reached singularity, and this is not electrons versus atoms, where this is not a simulation, where the future hasn't already happened, where we've gone into space and colonized or populated other planets, and humanity has already gone for another billion years, and here we are just in one version, as no different than a program on a computer. And it takes a long time to wrap your head around that, and it drives some people crazy. And it takes a really sophisticated, unlocked mind to understand and comprehend these things. But let's just assume for a second that everything's as it seems, and we can use your word political. Yes, the IRGC would be considered a dark force in the global political spectrum. Yes.
So I had a conversation with somebody today, and this guy is, I think he's an American. He's not really pro-Trump. He said that the reason that Africa is still safe. I mean, I'm not saying Africa is completely safe. He said the reason why we are not feeling the full force yet is because Israel is there to prevent the radical jihadists and Islam from overrunning Africa. And I'm like, hang on a second. Why would you say that? Because at the end of the day, if I look at Africa, I don't see Saudi Arabia owning a military base in Africa. I don't see the UAE. I don't see Iran as a threat to Africa. I see the United States with military bases everywhere in Africa. I see the French exploiting Africa. I see Israel and Israeli businesses exploiting Congo,
You see,
Nigeria, all
that's where
these
you're
places.
wrong. And I have to tell you something. In this version of the simulation, even
Mhm.
if this world is played out a million different times in different situations, in this version of the simulation, what the actual facts of this version of this world is, and again, whether it's humanly or godly or electronically, this world's version stems back to a certain deity. This is the story that this world is structured on, is that a certain deity made a pact with a certain group. That group was chosen to bring light into the world, and no matter what, going into the arguments, superficially with yourself and your views and everything else, I don't mean to insult you or put you down, especially on your stream. but I don't think you fully comprehend that the world is dependent on the people that this particular deity of this version of this world, had made the covenant with. So no matter what, when you talk about, Jews in Israel are here to bring this version of humanity into the light and bring it through to the next level. And if you don't understand that and don't want to look at it scientifically and mathematically, that's fine. I don't say that as a Jewish person who wants to imply that we're chosen or this or that, because I know that, your mind is not really able to understand it. But when you
Yeah, but
really, really get,
do you believe as a Jewish person that you guys are chosen? Now that you brought up that
listen,
topic.
listen, listen, listen. Again, if you are so unlocked, if your mind is still so locked, that what I'm saying in terms of nobody knows whether this is actual atoms organically or electrons, where we've already reached singularity, where this is a matrix. In this particular version of the world that we're living, and again, you're going to need to unlock your brain for a second. A human who lives to 100 years old
Yeah.
lives till 36,500 years, 36,500 days. It's not a lot. If you've ever played a video game and walked to the end of the map, you might wonder why. How is it that if you walk back 300 years, you're basically walking to the edge of the map? Because before that, there was fire and the wheel. There was no gas, there was no electricity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you understand it and you think about it and you start to comprehend, how is it that for millions of years there was nothing, and now all of a sudden you happen to be alive on this planet, where just in the last couple of thousand days, over the trillions of days that the globe's been spinning with nothing, all of a sudden there's electronic devices that communicate through the world and airwaves and interstellar travel happening. Okay. So when you want to look at this version of the world, the light in this world, what is civilized society,
Mm-hmm.
um, and saying this as a Jewish person is not to be braggadocious or to have you as a person who might not be on the same wavelength. Judaism has civilized mankind, throughout thousands of years. And
Yeah.
Judaism continues to bring light unto the nations and a light into the world. And when you say chosen, yes, chosen to bear the responsibility of bringing, Hashem's word to the world,
Yeah,
and to
but
bring and
on
to
one hand, you want.
transform. Listen, Sav, I gotta go to sleep. And obviously my mind spins every night, because when I was just a child, 6 years old, I remember I started thinking about space at night, and starting of thinking of something that's infinite, it can really do something to you. And so when you try to comprehend the concept of infinity, of never-ending space and ever-expanding galaxies that's expanding by light years, with every second that we speak, the galaxy expands by light years. So there's probably thousands of other planets out there with thousands of other lives, some parallel Earth stars, some with God, some with who knows? Okay. I don't think that, for us, unless we make it physically our bodies for the next 20 years, that we'll be at a point for eternal life. But within the next 20 years, to connect your brain to eternal life, as society would continue, you could literally sit as a program in an Apple Watch and continue your thought process for 1 million or 2 million or 10 million or trillion years,
Mhm.
because your mind, as you know it right now, could easily be downloadable into a program. So, like, I
Wow.
don't want to have very simple conversations. I prefer to look at, complex conversations. I prefer to look at things at a point of, we don't know whether we're, real or just electrons, and this is all just a simulation, or we're just, little fish in an alien's fishbowl. But what I can tell you is, yes, there is darkness in this world and there is light. Judaism was the original light that was chosen by the deity that our world understands to
Yeah.
bring light unto the nations. And I believe that, as technology seems to be approaching a certain point in time where the human brain will be transferred into a computer for eternal life, which is, sort of a scary thought. It does seem coincidental that the last stages of whatever plan has been in place for millions of years is about to take place. So, yeah, I do believe that the last force of darkness are about to fall in the world, and I look forward to it in a very
Yeah.
modern mindset without sounding too much like a crazy person.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this thought with us. uh,
Thanks for having me up. And look, I mean, I really challenge you to read about simulation theory, to watch stuff from George Hotz, GeoHotz, um, to read about singularity that Ray Kurzweil, that's RAY Kurzweil, have written about. To read about what Zbigniew Brzezinski, I'll send you his book Between Two Ages. I have it in PDF, and to really understand that, we're at a point in time where we don't really understand whether we're the world that we think we are, or whether we're just,
um,
some
yeah.
pets in an alien's fishbowl. But when you start really expanding your mind and thinking about the world that way, um, the conversations that we have on most days become irrelevant. So anyway, I'm glad I got a chance to speak with you. Have a great evening, and look forward to joining again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Big
coming on.
shout out to Savvark Media. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah. Danzaman. That was really interesting. What's going on? You see what is going on over the past 48 hours or even longer than that? Well, we're seeing flights being cancelled. We're seeing like movements around Western Asia, what they call the Middle East. What do you think will happen in the next, let's say, 2 or 3 days? Would there be a resumption of hostilities? America claims that I think that some of their frigates have crossed the Strait of Hormuz, so they want to have access to the other side of the Gulf. And do you think there'll be war again?
That's an excellent question. Can you hear me first and foremost?
Yes.
Man, I really wish I had more time to talk about this. I didn't expect to be sitting so long, but that was a very interesting conversation. Um, I like that you bring up what I like to speak about. I appreciate you targeting the topic of the conflict specifically, what's
Mhm.
going on in the Hormuz. Do I think that there's going to be a confrontation? I think everything points to that. And I have multiple examples why we can ascertain that that's going to be the case.
Mhm.
First, we need to understand that, as I mentioned in the comments before, what we're seeing out of the IRGC and the Hormuz is nothing new. In fact, the IRGC is actually behaving quite similarly to what they've been doing since 2019, as an example. Um, their
Okay.
their whole doctrine is basically um, asymmetric naval tactics. They are looking to harass and defeat a technologically more superior navy than themselves, which is the United States. So what are they really left to do except use swarm attacks as an example?
Mhm.
Um, their fast attack boats is something that they use quite often, and then they've proven to do it multiple times in the
And it's,
past.
it's very effective, right?
It is somewhat effective, but you got to remember this is still an example of asymmetric naval tactics. It's not exactly designed to defeat your opponent. It is more of um, utilizing low cost, high impact tools, and trying to mitigate a big conflict.
Mhm.
They do this with UAVs and drones as well. They set out mines and they use coastal defense systems. And that's something I'm gonna get into a little bit later. It's just so we understand exactly where everything is heading.
Mhm.
But the overall idea is that their goals are, use smaller invested arms to inflict high cost damage on the United States. And this is something that, smaller nations will have to use. They're taking advantage of the fact that they have geography on their side. And they are using several different systems to do this, not just drones, of course. There's also anti-access and area denial systems that they use. So examples of that would be their anti-ship missiles. And this is all important to understand because the question then becomes, what is the United States going to do against this? They're not just going to sit by and allow Iran to basically deny access to the Hormuz, and
Yeah, but
threaten
this
all these ships.
yeah, but this wasn't the case before America decided to bomb Iran. So if Iran did not activate this economic nuclear option that they have, what would have been the end game of America? Would America have bombed the nuclear facilities again and gone back home, or demanded the capitulation of the government? The reason why Iran is able to stall this American offensive is because of the Strait of Hormuz, and because if America escalates, it will mean zero oil coming from that area. Right now, they're still playing this game of managing the situation. So then the US is also trying to play this game of plucking the hen one feather at a time, where they say, oh, well, we have a ceasefire now and it's indefinite, but we will continue our blockade and use that opportunity to try to take charge of the Strait of Hormuz. So Iran is not going to accept that. And if you look at what is happening, on one hand, the government, the delusional government in Tehran, led by the civilian government, if you like, the presidents Masoud Pezeshkian and Abbas Araghchi, because for them, they see it from a moderate perspective. But the IRGC is the one that's seeing the reality, because this is, again, the IRGC is saying, hang on a second, if America is saying that you guys should continue negotiating on one hand, while they continue to move the assets closer to us, this is not what we want. It was in the middle of negotiations that America started imposing this blockade, and they don't believe that they are violating the terms of the ceasefire. So if you want to fight, why don't you just fight? Because if the war begins, the US would not be able to sustain this blockade on their ports. Although there will be a consequence for Iran as well, but that will mean that America will not have the kind of balance they're seeking, because Iran have what it takes to target some of these frigates and cause them enormous problems.
Okay, well, I would like to break that down. I think I need a reminder on your first comment. You said that this isn't something that the United States was willing to sustain or something that they planned for prior to these attacks. Is that correct?
No, I'm saying that the US is playing a game of deception. They are masking the whole idea of negotiations and Iran giving up the nuclear weapons and so on and so forth, and admitting that the regime will stay in power. But what they really want is to topple the government. That has been the plan from day one. It has not changed. And why should Iran continue negotiating? Because anytime they try to sit down abroad to negotiate with you, you come in. During the negotiations last year, Iran was bombed. During the negotiations this year, Iran was bombed. During the negotiation in Pakistan, America imposed the naval blockade. This is my point. So why should Iran trust anything? Because you have Iran, within the Iranian structure, you have different layers and strata and stratum, okay, in political leadership and military structures. So you have the elected leadership, which is made up of the president, and the foreign minister are the face of this government. They're the ones going abroad and talking, right? And then you have the faceless people, the IRGC. I mean, you don't really see them. They don't come out to talk that much. Then you have the parliamentary speaker, Galibaf, who is sort of the spokesperson of the IRGC, right? They have different objectives. The IRGC is saying, we don't trust the process. Meanwhile, the elected leaders want to be seen as, you know, bringing some sort of fresh air and positivity and say we want to talk with the Americans. And I can also understand, because they are the ones that are in public. And if they don't show that will of like going out there to negotiate. The Americans will kill them like they've done to other people. I heard the last time that the Israelis wanted to kill Abbas Arakshi and Masoud Pezeshkian, and the Americans like, okay, who are we going to talk with? So they also have to find the right balance in that regard. So, but with the IRGC, they know that this is not going anywhere. So why should anybody negotiate with America when the goal and intention is to topple the government?
I mean, that's also, all of that is very important to look into in this conflict. I just want to stress something very important. You're leaning towards the negotiation and political side of this, whereas I'm trying to convey to your original question when I came up here, whether or not there's going to be strikes. And
Mhm.
part of this is we need to look at what's going on in the Hormuz. Now, I'm open to talk to you politically about whether or not the negotiations are important, but a lot of the overlooked part of this conflict is what is going on in the Hormuz. How is Iran going to defend or attack ships? And how is the United States going to react? Because at the end of the day, it is my belief that that is going to be the next phase of this conflict. We've already
Yeah.
seen the airstrikes, we've already seen the first phase. The next
Mhm.
phase has been pre planned for many, many years. You know,
Mhm.
just as an example, like the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments out of Washington has been looking at the Strait of Hormuz, um, and the anti-access and area denial challenges that the Iranian government poses since
Mhm.
2012. Okay, this has been looked at prior to this conflict, and for many reasons. So, my main points when I came up here are, you need to look at what happened in the past so that we can understand how we're going to react in the future. We need to look at the capabilities of the IRGC, what they're able to do now in the Hormuz. And that way, we'll understand exactly what the next phase for the United States military is. Now, politically, you are negotiating in Pakistan. That's miles away from the Hormuz. That doesn't, as we've seen, the ships from the IRGC that are harassing um, cruise tankers and, sorry, oil tankers and um, cargo ships, they kind of operate separately from what's going on in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Uh, and, like, you need to understand so the IRGC is capable of inflicting damage to these ships. They're able to do it with several of their missiles. In fact, I think they've spent many, many years developing several types of missiles. They have obviously their fast attack ships are something that they've been using recently, but they
Mhm.
have anti-ship ballistic missiles. The Abu Mahdi cruise missiles that they've been using, those are long range. They also have extended range coastal coverage missiles, like the Kader missiles that cover about 300 kilometers. Um,
Yeah.
and so now we need to understand, right? Like, if that's what they have, what is the United States left to do? Um, and there's only a handful of things that you can actually do. Um, Number one is you can clear the mines in the Hormuz, um, and make sure that there's free access through the waters.
Mhm.
You can also provide um, not a convoy, sorry. You can assist the ships from coming through, which is also a risk to do because you're bringing in your navy to protect the ships. And the last thing, which is quite obvious to me, is that you're going to have to suppress missiles with coastal strikes. So, which of those options are you going to go for?
I mean, suppressing missiles with coastal strikes imply another a resumption of hostilities. Strikes from the sky imply gloves are off, right? And Iran could
That's
now
exactly
fire
my point.
at oil
That's
facilities
exactly my point.
everywhere and anywhere. And then you try to also, if you're attempting, so again, you're saying that this is happening all because it's Iran's fault. Iran initiated the strikes. Iran is preventing freedom of navigation. So what would you take a deal where Iran would say, yes, we are going to end this behavior in the Strait for you to pull back your troops and end this war? Would you accept that, or would you say no? I don't care. I want the regime out.
Well, that's a good question. That would depend on whether or not I'm foolish enough to believe, if they would do it again. My question to you then, Sav, is: do you think that they would stick by their word of doing that if that's something that they promised to do?
Yeah, I think you're flipping the question on its head, because I don't think Iran was doing this before you launched an attack on them and bombed 34 universities and destroyed power infrastructure, bridge, their oil facilities. The question here is, I mean, you say you don't trust them.
Well, you got to
They
be
don't
careful
trust
with
you.
what you say, right? Because you're saying you don't think that they've done this before, although the IRGC has been doing this for many years. In 1987 and
So on
1988,
this
they have attacked
19,
multiple
1987
tankers.
and 1988. Now, what happened? What was going on during 1987 and that period? Can you tell me?
Well, 1987 and 1998, Iran was
1987. What happened?
1987. Well, in regards to the ships,
Yeah.
to my knowledge, the tankers were being reflagged as Kuwaiti, and
Yeah,
the
but
U.S. was
that's not the point.
escorting those ships.
At that point, Iran was still at war with Iraq. You started a war with Iran that killed over 2 million people. The
Well,
U.S.
that's it.
also eventually launched Operation Praying Mantis in response to those blockade on the Straits. But the point I'm making here is that this was not peacetime. All of this related to this cause and effect. Every single incident you're referring to, Iran never initiates any attempt to prevent what you call freedom of navigation. And you want to make it look like, because for most Americans, this is what I've discovered. For most Americans, the beginning of the world, the day God created the heaven and the earth, is 1979, when those Americans uh, were taken hostage for 444 days. This is when God created the heaven and the earth. This is where the story about America and Iran started. And again, for most Israelis, October 7th was the day God created the heaven and the earth. So everything that was the prelude to that did not count. So I can take you through the story from the 40s and American intervention. The Americans had nothing to do with this at the beginning. The British invited you. You came in with the CIA and worked with the British to remove an elected leader of the country, Mossadegh, put him in prison, and he died there. This was the drop of water that ignited the ocean of conflict you're seeing today.
But my
Okay?
point being, Sav, is that even though that this, like, you're telling me that if they promise not to do this again, this is, we should accept the deal. And I'm not, necessarily
Yeah,
saying just because
I don't think you should trust them.
I,
And you are telling me that if you promised Iran that you not attack them again, you will not attack them again.
no, I'm saying that if they offered
Would you
not to,
make a promise to Iran that you will not bomb them again, and you keep your word?
that's a good question. What is in the negotiations? This is a whole different
So
topic.
uh,
I'm
uh
talking
so
about.
so so what you're talking about is exactly the same question, because if you're saying, okay, well, if we have an agreement, well, there was an agreement in 2015. Iran signed, America signed.
Okay, they made an agreement in 2015. Fantastic. In 2019 of June, Iran similarly attacked Omani tankers. What does it matter? They have a bad history
No,
of
no, they
doing
had an
so.
agreement with the United States of America and the European countries, the JCPOA. Iran scaled back on its nuclear program, brought in the IAEA into the country. President Trump came and topped the agreement and came back in his second term and bombed them. So you're talking about trust. Trust has to be a process. The 47 years they have been scarred. Why should I trust you? Right? Even if they give up the nuclear, that's the only card they have, the RGC. And I promise you, they are not leaving power. As long as those enriched uranium are there, you're not kicking them out. But the moment they give it up, that's it. The US is going to bomb the entire country and walk into the country. And this is again, there's the trust deficits on both sides. And I can understand from the Iranian side. But you are explaining to me from your perspective as an American and what you don't like the other side doing. Okay? Maybe you should talk to them and ask them what you have done to them.
Okay. I think that we've moved on to a separate conversation. I'm saying that it is inevitable that there will be strikes. I think that if you believe that the whole country will be um, hit with airstrikes, that's a plausibility. But as I stated before, the next phase most likely will involve the Strait of Hormuz and actions there.
Mhm.
Um, and I really need to stress this. The IRGC has a long history of harassing tankers and many different attacks prior to this conflict. As I stated in 2019, they attacked Gulf tankers, Omani tankers. They
Mhm.
used mines and explosive devices that had nothing to do with this conflict. And so the next phase, I believe, will be military strikes against Iranian missile launchers and as well as those ships, which is currently happening right now. As you saw in the news today, they struck 6 ships. That's what they are claiming. So is it
Yeah,
your
who did
belief?
that? The United States claimed that they've struck six fast movie. Are you referring to the US or Iran?
I'm referring to the United States, and I believe that this is, in fact, like what
Iran put out a statement to say that those were civilian boats that were transporting goods, and you unalive five of them, five civilians in the Gulf. So these
okay.
were not really well. I mean, you might think the Iranians are not telling the truth, but I'm telling you that this is what Iran claimed, that you struck civilian that were carrying supplies and and XYZ. This is what they
Yeah, this
claim.
is a similar tactic that Venezuela did at the beginning when the United States was striking cartel ships. They were claiming that these were civilians.
Was it really about cartel? Because President Trump said later on it wasn't about cartel. We wanted their oil. We now control it. Yeah,
I
because you
believe that
guys
this
believed.
was a show of power. It is one of the things that the United States does. It's part of their doctrine that they have to use show of force. If you
Yeah. So,
believe
so
that,
now hold on. Let's walk back on this. You said that Venezuela was playing the same tactic that Iran is playing now, claiming that these are just civilians and that
correct.
they're lying and that America was genuinely striking the cartels.
I'm not
And then
claiming that they're
President Trump
lying.
now said after like, look, all of this, we wanted to take the oil and we did that. And you are saying that, well, Trump was telling the truth then and he's telling the truth now. Which one is it?
Well, what I'm claiming is very simple. Whether or not you think that the RGC is lying, this is a simple tactic. You deny the attacks on your forces, claim them as civilian, and until we find out in the next coming weeks, up to a month, who was struck, none of the claims can be, proven just yet.
In a similar vein, the IRGC claimed to have struck two American frigates and prevented them from crossing the Strait. America
Absolutely,
denied it. America denied it. The CENTCOM said it didn't happen, and their objectives that they wanted to carry out today, that they've met it, and they were able to escort some of those vessels. And then we had
absolutely,
report later on. America denied anything happened. We had report later that one of those big vessels that was struck was from South Korea, and now they are going to assess the damage. And all of this is on the backdrop of America freeing 22 hostages that they took on board an Iranian vessel, repaired the vessel the damage, and sent it to Pakistan to offload whatever material they have. I think it was carrying oil. So I don't know, man. It's this whole thing is a mess. And the president you guys have, I think his approval rating have sunk to less than 30%. It depends on who you speak to. The president claimed one thing and is doing completely the opposite of it. Um, yeah, at the end
yep.
of the day, I had a conversation earlier with Amar, and he said this is a war between the good and the evil. The good meaning the forces of America and Israel and all their friends that can do no wrong, and the evil he's referring to is Iran and all the Muslims.
Mhm. Am
Is
I
this an
am I
opinion that you share?
No, I don't necessarily share the same opinion. I can understand where the thoughts are from. Now, that being said, I'm not also saying who I prefer is the good side and the bad side. Um, you know, my focus is on what will be the next military objective for the United States? And even let me just try and answer your question. Every side has their allies. As we know, the Iranians have the Houthis, they have Hezbollah,
Mm-hmm.
and to some degree, at some point, they had Hamas as their quote unquote ally.
Yeah.
Okay, Iran has a history of their ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz from the Persian Gulf, smuggling weapons, um, and there's multiple ships in 2002. Carrying A was captured. They found Katyusha rockets, anti-tank missiles, explosives, rifles, lots of different shipments of weapons. In 2009, same
To,
thing. They
to
were
who?
they were routing weapons to Syria. 500 tons
Mhm.
of rockets, mortars, and ammunition. So you
Yeah,
tell
but
me,
so that's
is this the
small. Is
good
that
guy or the bad guy?
like okay, selling? You say they were selling arms abroad for regional political purposes. Well, I mean, if I see the U.S. flying in weapons unchallenged and bringing right now, I think 2 or 3 tons of ammunition shipments to Israel over the past 1 week.
Mhm.
Nobody's really capturing them and calling them the bad guy. America is sending in 500 times more arms in one 500 1000x more arms into the region that Iran can dream of making. So one hand, one is legitimate, the other ones are bandits. This is like your explanation of it. And I'm not even
Simple.
here
Yeah,
saying
it's
Iran
not
shouldn't have
it's not
sent
something
weapons to Syria or
complicated.
sent weapons to Syria. When I see America through Operation Timber Sycamore sending in more arms to Syria during the war, is that okay when you send weapons to Al Qaeda? But is that is the good guys? They send
It's
weapons.
hard to answer that question when everybody's going to just use whataboutisms,
It's not
if you
whataboutism. It's not
if you
whataboutism.
think well
You're
if you
telling me
think
what? So you're basically claiming that Iran, because they are the bad guys and they are the bad. You said the good guys and the bad guys or whatever. I'm saying that look, it's morality from your own lens. Okay, it's an morality argument from your lens, and it's very weak to take that kind of position because America is doing exactly the same thing, and everybody's learning from them.
well, like if everybody's looking through their own lens and you think that your lens is correct, so be it. I don't know. You are claiming that, when Iran smuggles weapons to the Houthis and smuggles weapons to Hamas, that
Yeah.
somehow justifies light, as you guys were talking about,
No, no, no,
then
no, no.
so be it.
I'm saying that when you use terminologies like smuggle, and
Mm-hmm.
America sends, Iran smuggles.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to that. America sends weapons to Al Qaeda fighters in Syria. Iran
Mm-hmm.
smuggles weapons to the Syrian government.
Mm-hmm.
Even the
I'm not
choice of
claiming
language alone
that is
tells you.
correct. My claim isn't that that's correct. You can totally claim that smuggling, if you are putting weapons and you're hiding them, then what is that called?
Hiding them from who?
Well, I don't know. Why would you be putting weapons in civilian cargo containers? This was found
Okay.
on a ship in 2009 when Iran was
Mhm.
smuggling weapons to Syria. Why would you be putting weapons in civilian cargo containers? What is that called?
So America sending weapons to Israel, they use military cargo containers. Like this doesn't make sense because I
That is a big
see
difference. Absolutely.
the military cargo. Is that how they send them? No.
Okay. If that is your claim, I'm
Oh,
just saying how
sometimes
it
they can
is.
fly some of them through planes, but what does it even mean? Like military cargo containers? Is that what like the U.S. used to ship ammunitions to Israel or to Africa? I've seen some of these
It,
shipments. They look like
of
civilian
course,
cargos.
if it looks to you like civilian cargoes and the paperwork isn't tracked and everything, then that's called smuggling.
Hmm.
It's,
So
there's
like
many
yeah,
ways you
look
can
at the
break it down.
comments. Look at the comments when the US also use those same means to give arms to the cause. They're not doing it with the right paperwork and say we are going to give arms to the Kurds. And you're doing it like that. No, they're smuggling it to them as well. They're smuggling arms to terrorists in Africa and around the world. And there's documented evidence for this.
Again,
So the
at the
US
same
sending
time, don't
arms to
get
the US sending arms in through clandestine mean could also be termed as smuggling. But because it's
Listen,
this.
absolutely, absolutely. There's definitely parties that should not be obtaining these weapons. And I'm not claiming that just because the United States is, in my view, the more moral side, just because they're sending Al Qaeda weapons doesn't mean that it's acceptable. And then at the same time, you got to look at all the parties that are receiving the weapons as well. The
Mhm.
RGC isn't sending weapons to quote unquote the good guys. There's no point doing these whataboutisms. You just got to look at the
So
facts of what
who's
they
the good
ship.
guy and who's not? For instance, is in Iraq, Iran sent a lot of weapons to the Hashd al-Shabi. Now, the Hashd al-Shabi, or the Popular Mobilization Forces, were formed as a result of a fatwa from Grand Ayatollah Sistani in 2014 or 15, after the emergence of ISIS. Took over Raqqa, Saladin, Nineveh, took over some of the governorates in the center of Iraq, close to the Syrian border. So the Iranian government and the IRGC sent arms to these popular mobilization forces that were not state actors, they were non-state actors. And the US gave air cover to those same guys to remove IS in Syria, quote unquote. And then after the job was done, they say, no, 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 but those guys are terrorists. Whatever you did there is smuggling. Again, it's about this claim of morality. I don't have any problem with people criticizing the way and manner these operations are made. I'm just saying that the pot calling the kettle black is a problem. America, like when the US comes and say, oh, you, the Chinese, you are exploiting Africa, I'm looking for the next available flight to run out of that place because something is about to happen. If the US tell me, oh, the Chinese and the Indians are exploiting you, I'm checking for my wallet to make sure it's still there because it's the gaslighting, right? The gaslighting you to, and they're projecting what they are doing on others. Talking about smuggling, America's, even with sanction busting, America imposed oil sanctions on Iraq, and these companies that were busting the sanctions were American companies that were making money from it. So never, never trust a Yankee.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and try to change your mind on what your views are on the Iranian axis, and their proxies. It's clear to me that you have some sort of sympathy or um, admiration for them. And again, it's like the pro-Palestinian group. I cannot sit there and change their minds. They are well aware of their facts. They are quite opinionated, and so are you. So this
Hmm.
question of who I think is right and who I think is wrong,
Hmm.
you're not going to be sitting here and telling me I'm wrong based on whatever, 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 and then change my mind at the end of the day. My beliefs are my beliefs.
It's not, I mean, the appearance and reality are two different things. It's not about just what I believe, it's about the reality. The reality is as follows. The US and Israel launched operations against Iran to degrade and to weaken Iran politically and economically. America still maintain a presence there, and Iran now use their own economic option to put pressure on oil supplies around the world to force the global economy to hit the reset, to force the American hand in negotiations. That is a
Hmm.
fact. It's a
Okay.
fact that the US and I mean, except you're living in some sort of alternative reality, will you
Sure. Let
accept
me.
that America and Israel launched a war against Iran to weaken the country?
Okay. Let me remind you of something. Maybe a year and a half ago, um, when the IRGC leaders were in Lebanon and the strike was on them, what was IRGC doing in Lebanon with Hezbollah?
What they were doing in Lebanon when what? With what?
When they remember when they got hit and they quote unquote claimed
That
that it
wasn't in
was
Lebanon.
hit.
That was in Syria. That was the Iranian embassy in Syria.
Oh, correct. The Iranian embassy in Syria. My
Yeah,
mistake.
your question is what are they doing there?
What were they doing there?
From my last understanding, countries around the world have diplomatic relations and they have embassies. Or like America have, I don't know how many embassies, over 200 around the world. Iran have a lot of embassies. So if the Iranian embassy in Syria is there, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think it's very childish and dumb to like have this kind of questions put forward. What is the Iranians doing? Were the Iranians doing in Syria and having an embassy there?
Okay. If that's your claim, to me, I believe that that was the beginning of this conflict because that was when everything started kicking off.
Mm. When
The
when an Iranian
well
ambassador,
exactly.
Iranian military attaché in Damascus was killed, struck an
Okay.
embassy, which violates the sovereignty of Iran. And you can see that from
Fantastic.
the
You can make the same claims that Iran was shouting that day. My question is, were they there to undermine Israel's security?
whether the Iranian mission in Syria was undermining Israeli security, whether the Iranian embassy in Syria was undermining Israel's security. That's a fantastic question. Like, again, like sometimes when you have this conversation with people from the West, it's like you guys live in some sort of alternative universe.
Okay.
It's just like
And
me because I see the Nigerian embassy, there is American embassy here in Nigeria. They have a
mhm.
school attached to the embassy. They have military attaché there. They have, and they're doing espionage and subversive activities. Do we have a right to go and bomb them? Like, honestly, I still don't understand because when one rule apply to you and other rules apply, it's the same thing you can also argue about Azerbaijan. Israel basically have a military base in Azerbaijan on the Iranian border and sending people into Tabriz every time, killing Iranian engineers and medical and scientists, and they're saying it that we did it. And all of a sudden, Iran having an embassy, not a base, an embassy in Damascus, and you believe they're spying, they could possibly be spying on Israel. They could be possibly be doing things. But again, so what are the rules for? What are these rules for? What is the Vienna? Is it the Vienna Convention or the Geneva Convention? I think it's the Vienna Protocols or Convention on Diplomatic Community. What are those diplomatic procedures for? That anybody can wake up. And again, we noticed over the war, Israel war in Gaza, that they became emboldened. They went to strike. And you can also make the same argument. If Iran was your problem, they struck Qatar. They targeted Tunisia. Like, again, this is the behavior. One rule for you, one rule for others.
I find that when I speak to you that you believe that your truth is the all-knowing truth and everything else is a lie. I totally understand where you come from.
Mhm.
If it's your claim that Israel's attack on the IRGC in Syria is unjustified, then I totally suspect that you're going to turn around to me and tell me when the IRGC was involved and linked to plots of attacks in other countries such as Thailand, India, and Georgia.
Mhm.
That's okay. I find that to be very interesting. And I would like to know what your excuse for that would be.
My excuse for the RGC plan attack on what? On Israeli and American targets abroad?
Absolutely. What's the difference between Israel attacking targets abroad against the IRGC and IRGC doing its vice versa in countries that have absolutely nothing to do with Israel?
But you are the one that claimed that that was the original sin and that Iran had no right to respond. And I'm saying that if you,
I absolutely believe that that is the first thing because the IRGC was there to undermine Israel's security. They weren't there on a holiday trip. And you are going to
mm,
tell me that they were there just because, and that's okay?
and I didn't even say anything was okay. I'm just telling you that the US and Israel going to attack Iran the way they did is what brought us to this position. So you can't cry about the Strait of Hormuz when your own bodies were the ones that initiated this war.
If that's what you believe it is. I think it was a long time coming. I think the IGC, Hezbollah, they were all knowing exactly what their next plan was. It was slowly building. They weren't passive, they weren't sitting by and waiting to do nothing. You know, you like to paint them as some sort of passive entity that, just exists for the sake of existing, doesn't act against the state of Israel and the United States. They're not located all abroad, they just sit back in Iran. That is your claim. And I totally understand that as you're a supporter of them.
Mhm.
And if you believe that the United States attacked Iran for the sake of just doing it and getting oil, I think there's a lot of, you know,
It's
a
not
lot
just
of
about oil. It's
a
more than that.
lot of catalysts that happened before that. Little I call them micro catalysts because they're events that people forget about and become insignificant when you check the news every single day and forget. And those are things
Yes.
that need to be looked into.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's not just about oil, by the way. We need to understand that. But anyway, I really enjoyed this part of the discussion, and I hope we do this again. I'm going to bring the live stream to an end here. So for those of you just watching, joining, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that when I go live, you can see some of these conversations in real time. Thank you so much, Danzaman, for coming up, and I hope to see you on the other side.
Thank you very much, Sav. I appreciate it.